Parliament breaks for the holidays, one signature piece for the government did not get passed. Bill C-13, the Trudeau government's attempt to modernize the Official Languages Act. The bill itself has been stuck at the committee stage as it is being criticized by many. So where is it now? Where will it go in the new year? To answer those questions, we're now joined by the Minister for Official Languages, Ginette Petitpas. Minister, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the original plan was to have Bill C-13, again, the bill to modernize the Official Languages Act. The plan was to have it passed before Parliament adjourned. That did not happen. How disappointed are you?
Well, I have to say, like many interveners and stakeholders across the country, my hope was that we were going to have the passing of the Act and at least have it in the Senate. But that is not where we're at now. The bill is presently, as you're probably well aware, still in front of committee members doing the clause by clause at this point in time. So we'll have to come back in January and then from there continue the work that is being done. But I'm hopeful that we'll be seeing the passage of the legislation in a very timely fashion.
Now, Anglophone groups within Quebec criticize the bill because it recognizes French as a minority language within Canada and North America, but it doesn't recognize English as a minority language within Quebec. What do you say to that?
Well, I think when we look at the numbers across the country, and even in North America, we have to acknowledge that French is the minority language in Canada and also in North America. And if we really want to reach substantive equality with both official languages, we certainly have to do more in order to promote the French language. We do realize that the Anglophones in Quebec are the minority community in Quebec. However, overall nationally, French is still the minority language.
But I guess the concern is if it does not specifically state that English is a minority language within Quebec, then their rights become that much more tenuous.
Well, actually, we had some witness experts that appeared before the Senate and the Parliamentary Committee, and the former Chief Justice Bastarache, who was a Supreme Court Justice, made it very clear, and he said that English-speaking Quebecers will lose no rights when it comes to Bill C-13. So at the end of the day, no rights will be removed from Anglophones in Quebec. That is absolutely not our intent at all in this legislation. But what we want to do is to make sure that we do all that we can to preserve our French language, because we know that French is in decline across Canada.
Well, again, if it's not codified, though, does it make the Anglophone community more vulnerable? Whether or not that's the intent, if it's not actually codified, how are they protected down the road? Your government may have perfect intentions, but 50 years from now, 100 years from now, if they're not codified, how do we ensure that Anglophone rights within Quebec are protected?
With respect to the legislation, let me be very, very clear. There are absolutely no rights that are taken away from Anglophones in Quebec. With respect to Bill C-13, we want to ensure that all minority communities across the country are protected, and that includes Anglophones in Quebec and Francophones outside of Quebec. However, we also have to recognize that nationally, as I've indicated, that the Francophone language, the French language, is in decline. And we have to make sure that we do our due diligence to make sure that we don't see those numbers decrease even more. So my message to Anglophones in Quebec, we absolutely will not and do not, with this legislation, we will not be taking any rights away. We simply want to make sure that, again, that we do what we need to do to make sure that our Francophone language does not disappear. And that is the intent of Bill C-13. And we're really hoping forward that we're going to be able to move forward fairly quickly, because stakeholders across the country have told me on numerous occasions that the longer that we wait, the more that we're going to miss out on.
Mm-hmm. Now, okay, I take your points that you're making here, but the Bloc Québécois, they want more of this bill. They want French to be the predominant language within the federal civil service in Quebec. If the bill itself acknowledges, as you do, that French is a minority language under threat within Canada and within North America, why not make that amendment to make French the predominant language within the civil service in Quebec?
Well, I think with respect to what we're talking about, with Bill C-13, we're talking about the federal government taking its responsibility when it comes to protecting and promoting French all across Canada and also in Quebec. We are really working within our area that we're responsible for. And as a government, it's really important that we take our responsibility. The federal government, we are the first government to recognize that French is in decline in this country, and we want to make sure that in federally regulated areas that we have a regime in place that Francophones in Quebec will be able to work in their language and also be served in their language. But aside from Quebec as well, I come from New Brunswick. I also want to make sure that in areas where we have a high proportion of Francophones, that those rights will also be available to them. So moving forward, again, we certainly want to make sure that the federal government takes its responsibilities in protecting and promoting French, and that's exactly what we're doing. And finally, the other quick thing that I should add, the regime that we've also put in place, Michael, with respect to federally regulated areas, the regime that we put in place is very, very similar and aligned to the one that Quebec has put in place, because we wanted to make sure that people didn't opt in or opt out of a regime because one was easier than the other. So we've really made sure that our two regimes are quite aligned.
Well, you say opt in, opt out. We've also heard concerns around Indigenous language rights. The Assembly of First Nations, they do not believe that there should be a requirement to operate in French, or rather the requirement to operate in French. They don't believe that that should prevent any Indigenous person from getting a job.
Well, with respect to the Official Languages Act, we've made it very, very clear in our preamble that we absolutely recognize the importance of Indigenous languages within Canada. We know that we have over 70 Indigenous languages within this country, and it's very important that we do all that we can to preserve and to promote those languages as well. It's an identity issue, it's a cultural issue, just as our two official languages are. So in no way do we want to do anything to undermine the development of those languages.
Minister, really appreciate the time today, and if I don't get a chance to say it, happy holidays.
Thanks to you.